Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where in this video I will be providing an update in relation to the status of the channel and my plans for 2022. The first thing that I want to go over is related to a change that some of you have already noticed, and that is that I will be publishing videos for Smiteworks on their Fantasy Grounds channel on top of releasing videos for my own channel. I will be involved in updating many of their videos they currently have on their channel that relate primarily to 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, but there will also be some content that relate to just Fantasy Grounds Unity that I will also be going through and making sure it's up to date. Throughout this process, this will involve going through and ensuring that many of the gaps that currently exist on their channel in relation to various videos that Smiteworks has wanted to record but haven't had a chance to do so yet will also get filled. This is a collaborative effort between Smiteworks and myself, and I am working closely with Derek Batting of customer support to identify the various topics that we will be covering. I am also working closely with Brad, known as the Simple DM, as he is helping me create some of the graphical assets that are being used in the final edits of the videos, that help identify them as videos that I have completed. All of these videos are going to be uploaded to their channel, but if there is a video I feel needs far more detail to help those out that actually need that level of information, a longer version of those videos will be simultaneously released on my own channel. In early 2022, I suffered a single hard drive failure, and that ended up cascading into something far larger. The computer I've been using to record all of the various videos that I've published thus far was an older 4th generation Intel CPU, putting it at around 7 to 8 years old. But I was also using an Asus Republic of Gamers Maximus 7 motherboard that had built-in RAID capabilities. Unfortunately, I've also upgraded that system over the years, including changing the OS a couple of times, and during my last pass of those changes, I identified that the Intel Rapid Storage drivers would not install on the system in its current state due to the age of the chipset in the CPU. This meant I had zero visibility on the status of the RAID's rebuild capabilities because I was running a RAID 10 array, and beyond the constant flashing of the hard drive, I had no other indication that something was happening. And because of that uncertainty, I left the system alone for a 24-hour period while I let the hard drives do their rebuilds, which it did eventually complete. However, as I started to go through and recover the data onto various backup media that I had yet to actually go through and back up, just as a precaution, a second hard drive failed, which cascaded into a third hard drive failing during the rebuild of that particular failed drive. I got very lucky because in the end, the two drives that I had left still had all of the relevant data on it, and it was just simply their mirrored opposites that had actually failed for the second and the third time. Thus, I was able to extract the raw disk image from those particular drives, convert that into a soft array, and I was able to take the data off of it. So I got very lucky. Now, due to the age of the system and the fact that I've been debating about replacing it anyway, I figured it was time to go ahead and get a replacement. And the new system is a 12th gen Intel Core 12700K CPU sitting on an Asus TUF 690Z motherboard with 32GB of RAM. I've also installed a 500GB NVMe PCI Express boot drive, two 1TB NVMe PCI Express drives in a striped array for a total of 2TB of storage for the purposes of video recording, thus allowing me to increase the quality of the video's end result. On top of that, I have four 1TB SATA-based SSD drives in a RAID 10 array for another total of 2TB of storage for things like my applications and games. The only thing that I've transferred from a hardware point of view from my old system is the EVGA 1080 Founders graphics card that I bought several years ago, and it's relatively new. It does still appear to be working okay, although there are a few minor issues with it, but I will be upgrading that as soon as I can find a supply and a price that makes sense in relation to the NVIDIA 30 series of graphics cards. Most of the parts arrived within a week of the components being ordered, but the CPU cooler had to be returned and reordered because I got shipped the wrong cooler. While I had gone through and correctly identified that the liquid cooler I was looking for was the Asus TUF ARGB liquid cooler, unfortunately it looks like the one that actually got ordered was the LC RGB cooler, which is meant for the AMD-based CPUs, not for the Intel-based CPUs. So I don't know whether it was myself that made the confusion or whether the vendor themselves shipped me the wrong one. Regardless, they took it back and I went ahead and reordered the ARGB cooler, and that arrived probably within 2 or 3 days after that particular order was made. And once the system was built, it took me a couple of days to go through and get the data itself restored to the system, as well as several more days to get the last terabyte of data that I needed off of the old drives. And that is because I had to go through and convert the old drives into that soft array in order to be able to do so, and that just simply took time to do. Finally, I ran into several audio-related issues that had me sounding like several sci-fi-based robots during my test recordings while I was going through and getting all of my recording elements set up and ready to go. But I was able to trace those down to a borked audio driver installation, and once that was cleared up, I was finally able to get a good solid recording. If anyone is interested, I will provide a list of all of the various parts that I ordered in the description below, and possibly provide some links, although they might be to the Canadian shops related to where I ordered these. The final update is broken into two smaller parts, but they are related to one another, and that is that my publishing schedule is going to be changing to a release schedule where I am publishing one video per week for the foreseeable future. And the reason for that is twofold. The first of which is that I have begun to renovate my home to deal with a few issues that have come to light over the course of the last few years. I've owned this house for almost 8 years, and it's time for me to address those issues before they become larger problems, and the only time that I have to do that work is on the weekend. This is usually when I typically do my recordings, as well as all of the editing for my videos. If you recall, I'm doing this as a hobby, not really to make money. Meaning that I won't be able to record as many videos as I usually do on the weekends, and still have time to complete the work on the renovations. I'm aiming for a more ecologically friendly, quieter, and more comfortable home in relation to heat retention in the winter and cooling in the summer, while working on addressing other issues that have been cropping up over the course of the years. Now, don't get me wrong, most of these issues are relatively minor. In fact, all of them are relatively minor. The problem is that there's a number of them, and while one issue isn't that big of a deal, multiple issues can actually cause a huge problem within a home. To reduce any financial risk associated with the costs around these renovations, I'm going to be taking this slow and will be spreading these renovations over the course of potentially a year or more. But the end result is going to allow me to include a woodworking workshop, which I'm going to potentially use to build myself a nice Dungeon Master's table for my in-person games, as well as a brand new office where I will be able to create a proper recording studio rather than the ad hoc setup that I'm using now that is relatively noisy. The second reason is that in order to help Smiteworks out, I am aiming for a weekly release of videos for their channel as per our collaboration, and this is primarily to help them bring forward many of their outdated videos that they have available through their wiki and through their YouTube channel in a reasonable amount of time so that we can bring forward the knowledge base associated with Fantasy Grounds Unity to its current state, rather than some of the old Fantasy Grounds Classic data that is still there, as well as information related to older editions of Fantasy Grounds Unity. Now, once again, I want to thank everyone who has taken time to watch the videos on my channel, as well as contributed to the various discussions on all of the social media platforms that I have set up for us. Additionally, everyone who has subscribed to my channel, liked or disliked a video, as well as commented on the videos directly, thank you for doing so, as that does help promote this channel on YouTube to other viewers who might be interested in the topics that I am publishing videos for. With that, this brings us to the end of this channel update video. Thank you, and I will see you around.